If you're looking for the best ways to rig up live shrimp, this video is for you. What's up guys, this is Tony with Salt Strong, and I'm going to be walking you through sort of the ultimate shrimp rigging guide. And it's really going to come down to what type of hook you use, what size of hook you use, and use a weight versus no weight, fishing in current versus no current, so all those different variables. And we're going to try to simplify it as much as possible. So first off, when it comes to rigging shrimp, there's really two ways of doing so properly, and that's going to be rigging through the head or rigging through the tail of the shrimp. Now first let's talk hook size. Hook size is going to be very important, especially if you're using live shrimp, because what you don't want to do is go too big on a hook that it weighs down the shrimp, but you don't want to go too small on a hook that you're missing fish. So when it comes to hook size, I will have anything from a number 1, which is going to be the smallest, up to possibly a 3/0 hook, because you can have some different size shrimp, as I'll show you here. We'll take this guy here. He's a little on the smaller side. So this shrimp here, a little on the smaller side, about 3 to 4 inches long. That's when I would go with the smaller hook. And then you can have some big daddies, which I'll show you here if I can grab them. You'll have some Mac Daddy shrimp that you may need to use a 3/0 hook with, so you may need to go with a bigger hook. These hooks that I like are made by Owner. They are the SSW super needle point octopus hooks. They're J hooks. They work really well, but hooks, they all come in a variety of shapes and sizes. As long as you match it to the size of the shrimp you're using, you will get the job done. Again, you don't want to weigh down that shrimp with an excessively large hook, and you don't want to go too small where you might miss a fish on a shrimp like this. Now, aside from the hooks, there are a couple other things you're going to need to properly rig up shrimp. Depending on how you're fishing, I like to have an assortment of split shot weights. You don't need a lot of them, because if you need to put more weight on, you could just put an additional split shot weight on. So I'll have a few packs of different weights. That way I could keep my shrimp down on the bottom, which we're going to talk about here in a few, as to why you would want to do that and how to properly do that. And then your leader material. This is something a lot of people make a big mistake on. They think, okay, well, I'm fishing for snook, I need to go really heavy on my leader. When you do that, if you use just a straight, 3-foot section, a 30 or 40 pound leader with a shrimp, that leader is going to weigh that shrimp down, and it's not going to let it swim naturally. So what I like to do is go with a small or a lighter short section of leader. Let's say this is 15 pound Andy Mono. I'll use about 2 feet of that, and then I'll tie on a small 8 to 10 section of 30 pound as a bite tippet for snook and tarpon and those species that have those rough mouths. That can make it tough to get those fish landed, because they'll rub through really thin leader. So go with a long section of thin leader if you're going for snook and tarpon, and then tip it off with a small section of heavier leader. And then aside from the leader, you may want to get yourself some corks. Corks work great if you're trying to keep your shrimp up out of the grass or off the bottom, or you can also use a cork as sort of an attractant. Popping corks, you can make a lot of noise with them and attract fish in really dirty water. So that's really it. Those hooks, some split shot weights, different types of leader depending on the species you're going after, and some corks. Now when I'm fishing with live shrimp, depending on the type of area, but if I'm mainly fishing out in open water, I'm just going to use a nice light Inshore Setup. This is our slam stick, 7'6". This is actually a medium light. That lighter tip is going to be better for casting. That way you don't fling the shrimp off the hook. And then I've got a small reel on here, 1,000 size Daiwa Fuego. 2,500 will be fine as well, or 3,000. If you're fishing docks and heavy structure where you need some power to get those fish away, I would go heavier on the line. Right now I have 10 pound braid and just 15 pound leader. If I was fishing heavy structure, I would go with maybe 15, 20 pound braid and a stiffer rod. That way you can pull those fish out of that structure. And we have various rods and reels and line, leader, hooks, all the gear you need at fishstrong.com. So keep in mind, if you need any stuff to get out there and start catching more fish, get it at fishstrong.com. And if you're one of our insider members, be sure to take advantage of those great savings and discounts that you guys get. And now, how to rig up live shrimp. Again, like I said earlier, you either rig them in the head or the tail. You never want to rig them right in the middle of the body, because then they're just going to lay on the bottom on their side and not look natural, and they'll die if they can't keep moving around. So I'll go through the head or the tail, and if you notice on the head of a shrimp, you're going to have a dark spot That is their organs. You don't want to go through there, and you don't want to go through the front where their eyes are. You want to go right in the middle where it's all clear. So right under the horn, this is the horn right here that sticks out the top. We're going to go right through the middle, just in front of that dark spot, to rig up that shrimp. And these shrimp will stay alive very long when you rig them up through the head, and then the other way will be through the tail. So there's two ways of doing this. You can either leave the tail on or pinch it off. If I'm sight casting the fish, I like to pinch that tail off. So just for demonstration, we'll pinch the fan part of the tail off. When you pinch the tail off, that actually helps release scent. And again, that doesn't kill the shrimp. There's no organs back there. Shrimp don't bleed, so it's not going to kill the shrimp. And then what I'll do is you can either go through the meat when you pinch the tail off, or you can just go from one side out the other near the base of the tail, just like so. And that's going to be good for casting the shrimp. As you can see, that shrimp is still well alive with that tail off of there. So if you're sight casting or need to make a long cast, rigging them up through the tail is the way to go. Now, when it comes to free lining a shrimp where you don't use any weight, you just have a hook, leader, cast that shrimp out, versus using a weight, like I said earlier, it's really going to come down to the type of area that you're fishing. So for example, I'm out here on a flat that I'm sitting in about 1.5 feet of water. There's no current, there's no wind. So when I cast this shrimp out, I want it to swim around freely. So what I'm going to do is actually rig that shrimp through the head in an area where there's no current, and I'm going to let that shrimp, I'm going to cast it out, and I'm going to let that shrimp just swim around freely. When you rig them through the head, they're able to do that. If I was fishing in current, let's say there was some good wind, there was some good current, I would rig that shrimp through the tail. That way that shrimp can swim away from me. Shrimp do swim forwards. A lot of people think, you know, when you rig up an artificial shrimp, you rig it through the head. Well, that's the wrong way. Well, shrimp naturally swim forward. When they're fleeing from a predator, they snap their tail and go backwards. So again, if I'm fishing shallow water, no current, I will rig through the head, free lined. If I'm fishing current in shallow water, I will rig that shrimp through the tail. Then when it comes to using a weight, again, I'll just have some split shots, and using a weight is going to be very beneficial if you're fishing where fish are very lethargic. They're not willing to really chase down a shrimp that's fleeing away from them. So that weight holds that shrimp down, but it still allows them to swim around a bit. So because of that, you don't want to pin your weight right up against the hook. What you want to do is put it about 6 inches to a foot above that hook. Just put a split shot on there. That way, when you cast your shrimp out and it's sitting down on the bottom, that shrimp can still swim around, but in one little spot. So if a fish comes up and they want to eat that shrimp can't get away from them. It's going to be pinned down to the bottom. So great way if fish are being a little finicky or lethargic to keep that shrimp in the strike zone so those fish can get it. And now you can use a weight in current or no current. If I'm fishing in no current, I will again hook that shrimp through the head, go in behind the organ there, or in front of the organ rather. You don't want to go through it. And I'll let that shrimp just swim around freely on the bottom. Now, if I'm fishing in current with a weight, what I'll do is pinch the tail off like so, and then rig that shrimp through the tail. That way he's more streamlined in the current. So when you cast your bait out, that shrimp is nice and streamlined sitting on the bottom in current. And now the last thing we'll talk about here are floats. Again, there's various styles of popping corks and corks out there. The main reason I would like to use a cork is if I'm trying to keep that shrimp up out of, grass or structure that's off the bottom. So you have to adjust the length of your leader accordingly. And again, depending on the activity of the fish, the business end, I'll either have it free lined or with a weight. Now, if I need to keep that shrimp down, if there's a lot of current and the current is swinging my shrimp up, I will put a weight on there. If those fish really don't want to chase around a shrimp that's popping all over the place, I'll put a weight on there. If you have a lot of small fish, I'll put a weight on there. So again, the weight is going to be more for extra current. You want to keep that bait down, and if those fish are missing the shrimp or just not willing to go after it because it's moving around too much. And then whenever I am using a cork, there's really only one way I like to rig the shrimp, and that's going to be through the head. That way that shrimp can swim around freely. It'll sort of swim in circles. If you rig it through the tail, it's trying to pull that cork pretty much the entire time, and it's going to wear itself out, and that shrimp can die faster if you rig it through the tail under a cork, because it's working against that cork. So if you're using any type of cork, again, I like to go through the head of the shrimp like so. That way he can swim around nice and freely underneath that cork. So I hope this helps you out next time you get out there on the water and you're using live shrimp to try to catch some inshore fish. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them down below.